Science communication for social inclusion. That was the theme of the most recent conference of the Public Communication of Science and Technology Network that you and I both attended in May 2014 in Salvador, Brazil. And at first, if you look at a theme like that, you can be a little bit uncertain about what we mean by that. And I think it's also one of those themes that could mean so many different things for different people. How do you see using science for social inclusion, and what does it mean to you, or science communication?
I used to think that when I first became a science communicator at CSIRO, that if I did my job really well, I'd be made redundant.
Okay.
That scientists would have the skills and the ability to do their science as part of a society, you know, that people would be informing what research they did, that people would be involved in that research when appropriate. Not all science lends itself to that, but some does. That people would be reviewing the science ideas and products that came out. And that, to me, that is what science in society or inclusiveness is. However, 25 years later, and I'm not redundant.
Definitely not much in demand.
And so I suspect that to achieve this sort of social inclusion, that you'll always need this sort of science communicator, mediator person. And I think it's because we have the time and hopefully the skills and increasingly the research to back us up, to be able to work with scientists, to make it easier for them to do all those things. So to make it easier for them to go out and consult with people about what research they should do, to make it easier for them to be able to translate their complex science, to distill that science in a way that people can easily understand and grasp, to make it easy for scientists to challenge people with their ideas rather than their language. And so for me, social inclusion is all about, in many ways, the role of the science communicator and us acting almost like a relationship manager between science and society, right, and helping to make it all happen.
You touched on that idea of distilling science to make it more accessible. And I think that's a key one for many people in science communication. How do I get from a complex scientific journal type article with tons of jargon and a very specific sort of rigid format to something that people who are not specialists can relate to and that they can see is meaningful to them? Tell us a little bit about how you approach that process.
Well, I approach it very much, again, from the perspective of the people I'm wanting to communicate with, to tell that story to. So what is it that they want to know about the research? Mm-hmm. What are the things that would attract their interest? What is important to them in their everyday lives? And I think any good story, whether it's about science or anything, is about people. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes the biggest mistake that scientists and science communicators make about telling science stories is to forget the people side of it. Mm-hmm. And people are about emotions. Mm. People are about not being perfect, about the good and the bad. Mm. They're often about conflict, as well as great joy and happiness. Mm. So it's about the people. I also think it's about showing rather than telling. So, for example, instead of saying the scientist was very excited when he made the discovery, you would show that in a story. You would say, when the scientist saw how the roots of the plant had grown down into the soil, he yelled up to his supervisor and said, "Eureka! Our genes have worked!"
Yeah.
And we can see their excitement. We can feel their excitement. We're not just told about it.
Yeah.
So it's making us part of that emotion, part of that story by showing us, by engaging our senses in the story. So we can see it, sometimes we can feel it, sometimes we can even smell it if it's written really well.
And if a scientist says to you, which happens sometimes still, I think certainly in where I engage with scientists, is that they fear this process of public communication because they fear that they now have to dumb down their science.
I hate that term, dumbing down. I never use it. It's completely banned. No one use that term, dumbing down. I also think oversimplifying is very, very dangerous, because as soon as you start to lose the context of science, as soon as you start to lose even the qualifications of science in some case, you lose the accuracy, you lose what the science is about. So I like to use the word distill. And it's a bit like creating perfume from many, many flowers. That creates a complex aroma, but you have distilled it down to its essence. And so it's pulling out the things that are most important to who you're trying to communicate with, and framing that in a way where you don't lose the context. And it is skill, and sometimes scientists and science communicators aren't very good at it, but it is something you can get better at with time and practice.
Thank you, Jenny.